Hello, đây là cái cuộc trao thả con tin giữa Do Thái cũng như là Hamas, người Palestine ở dải Gaza. Đây là xin mời quý vị theo dõi. Đây là bên Hamas nó thả con tin một cái nhóm đầu tiên á, từng đợt trong 4 ngày tạm đình chiến. Đây là phía bên Do Thái, họ đang chuẩn bị để đón những con tin thả đợt đầu á. Cho biết là khoảng 40 người phụ nữ cũng như là trẻ em người Do Thái á, được bên Hamas nó thả. Và bên Do Thái sẽ trao trả lại cho Hamas là 150 người Palestine liên hệ tới Hamas. Nó sẽ trả nhiều đợt khác nhau trong vòng 4 ngày. Đây là do nơi bên cái nước Qatar, nó là cơ quan trung cũng như là một nước trung gian giữa Do Thái Hoa Kỳ. và Hamas để trao trả con tin. Nhưng mà bên phía Do Thái, Thủ tướng Do Thái ông nói tiếp tục khi trao trả con tin thì quân đội Do Thái sẽ tiêu diệt Hamas, và Hamas cũng muốn tiêu diệt bên Do Thái luôn. Hai bên vẫn còn lên tiếng để chống đối lẫn nhau. Cái internet đó, nó hơi yếu á, nó chập chờn.
Once again. Yesterday in Jerusalem, we also had very fruitful meetings with President Erdogan and Prime Minister Netanyahu. I conveyed to them Spain's firm condemnation of the terrible terrorist attacks of 7 October. I celebrate the agreement for the release of some hostages and to establish a humanitarian pause, while emphasizing that all remaining hostages must be released. I also reiterate Israel's right to defend itself, but it must do so within the parameters and limitations imposed by international humanitarian law. And this is not the case. The indiscriminate killing of innocent civilians, including thousands of boys and girls, are completely unacceptable. Violence will only lead to more violence. We need to replace violence with hope, with peace. And this is also something that I told President Herzog and Prime Minister Netanyahu yesterday. The time has come to break for good this endless cycle of violence that has condemned the region for decades. We cannot afford, and above all, Israelis and Palestinians cannot afford to continue to live under the constant threat of conflict and war and suffering. It is time to give the region a horizon of peace and prosperity and security, stability. That is why we also wanted to visit President Abbas in Ramallah on this trip. We must offer Palestinian people a future of hope. It is not just a question of finding a solution to the crisis in Gaza. Israel must be the first to take a comprehensive approach, which also deals with the West Bank and East Jerusalem. This will only be possible through the implementation of the two-state solution, including the recognition by the international community and Israel of the state of Palestine. The European Union, the Arab League, the Organization for Islamic Cooperation have already called for an international peace conference to be held as soon as possible. We need to bring a credible political perspective to the whole process if it is to succeed. Both Israel and Palestine must be at such a conference, and the international community must be involved in supporting it. Europe is already to work to make it happen. The aim of the conference must be to implement the two-state solution. Turning a new page of mutual recognition is the best way to sustainable peace. But first, hostilities must end. And my country, Spain, will continue to call for a lasting humanitarian ceasefire and will continue to work to offer a horizon of peace and prosperity to this beautiful region. Shukran, thank you very much. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, dear Pedro. And my colleague Pedro Sanchez and I come here with a message of solidarity and of humanity. On the other side of this border, horrific fighting has taken place. Too many civilians have been killed. They were the first victims, and as always, the first victims are in general women and children. Families have been torn apart. Communities have been destroyed. Israel has the right to defend its citizens. The horror of Hamas is barbaric, and Hamas needs to do everything to release all the innocent hostages. Probably today 13 hostages will be liberated, but 13 hostages is not enough. All the civilian hostages that have been captured need to return home. Please send them home now. Hamas must end the cycle of violence that they started on October 7. And the military operation that Israel is conducting to stop the terrorist attacks must respect international humanitarian law. A military operation needs to respect international humanitarian law. The killing of civilians needs to stop now. Way too many people have died. The destruction of Gaza is unacceptable. We cannot accept that a society is being destroyed the way it is being destroyed. We know that the World Food Programme has around 1,300 tons of supplies ready to be delivered to the people of Gaza. We are talking about water, about fuel, about medicines, about other basic needs. We have absolutely no time to waste during this ceasefire. People have fled their homes, they are living in very difficult circumstances, and winter is coming. So we must do everything for the help that is standing there to get it to the other side of the border. And Egypt is doing all it can. And really I would like to thank the leadership of Egypt in this, but altogether we cannot lose further time. And Belgium has upscaled its humanitarian aid. We are sending medicines, we are sending sleeping bag, hygiene kits. We'll have additional planes coming in the next days. I believe that a joint mission like this has an important message to give. And that message, we give it here on the behalf of the European Union. There is no military solution to this conflict. One day, people will need to talk to each other, and a political solution is the only solution that is possible. And so the talks need to be relaunched. We need to stop the settler violence on the West Bank, and we need to stop the killing of innocent people. We need to respect international humanitarian law, and we must make sure that all parties are abiding by the rules. And indeed, Pedro, we hope that the peace conference can take place as soon as possible. And the last word that I would like to address is to all of you. There are here hundreds of volunteers who share the message that you bring here, a message of humanity, a message of solidarity. I can only hope that your motivation, that what you are doing here as volunteers is being responded on the other side, and that access is being given, and that the million of people that are in need in Gaza get the help that they need. And as I said before, a temporary ceasefire is good. A permanent ceasefire is the objective and is the only way to help the killing of innocent people. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, Mr. De Croo, this is Mohammed Gad from Al Qahira News TV. I would like to address a question to both of your Excellencies. The mediation that took place by Egypt, Qatar and the USA led us to where we are today, reaching a humanitarian ceasefire. How do you intend to support the mediation of an extension to this humanitarian ceasefire going beyond the 4-day cap?
Thank you for your question. 1 day of ceasefire is good. 5 days of ceasefire is better. And a permanent ceasefire is the objective. And everything needs to be done to use this moment. To use this moment to release all the hostages. To use this moment to get the more than 1,000 trucks that are standing there, to get them inside. And then to talk. As I said, there is no military solution to the conflict. There is only a political solution to the conflict. And people need to talk one with another. And I can only hope that the ceasefire that probably starts in a few minutes, let's use this opportunity. In the whole Middle East peace process, there have been so many missed opportunities. Let today not be another missed opportunity.
So thank you for your question. I agree with my friend Alexander. I think this ceasefire is a good step forward, but it's not enough. I think that the large majority of the international community agreed that we need to a permanent ceasefire, humanitarian ceasefire, and I also would like to highlight that the Security Council, the UN Security Council, also approved a resolution for humanitarian pauses, for humanitarian corridors, and this is binding, and this is mandatory for all the member states of the UN. So I hope that this first humanitarian ceasefire is the prelude for a permanent ceasefire, and we can start conversations for peace and for a concrete resolution of this conflict, and that this the spiral of violence is stopped, and we can provide peace, security, and all the needs, the humanitarian needs that the people in Gaza needs.
For the two prime ministers, after 2 intense days, and especially after your meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu, do you see any possibility for the...
I think that the most important thing is that we go to this peace conference with two main goals achieved, or at least on the table. The first one is the permanent ceasefire, the respect for international humanitarian law, which is not the case nowadays, with this disproportionate response taken by the Israeli government. And second, with a concrete idea on how to move forward this two-state solution, which could bring peace and security and coexistence for both countries, Israel and Palestine. I think that this is a crucial moment. We are living a momentum where all the international community must be engaged in a solution that could last, a solution that could be fulfilled by both parties, and a solution that could provide the peace, the stability, the security, and the prosperity that people in Gaza, in Palestine, and also in Israel needs.
To add to that, a peace conference can only happen if two important steps have been taken. The first step is release all the hostages, and equally so, stop the killing of innocent civilians. That's the priority for the next days, and then we hope that people can start talking one with another.
Mr. Leclerc, Mr. Sanchez, Jens Fransen for Belgian public broadcaster VRT. We've seen these hundreds of trucks on the way to the border. What do you think if you see all this aid while it can't go in, it can't go to the people who need it desperately?
Yeah. First of all, I would like to thank the Egyptian authorities and all the people working here for being ready. And what I see here is this side of the border is ready to provide massive aid to people who need it. I can only hope that in the next minutes there is a response on the other side and that aid can get in. Second element, this is for the moment the only access point. We need more access points. We cannot only have an access point on the south side. We also need access points on the north side, which means that there also needs to be access points starting from Israel and not only from Egypt. And we hope that as soon as possible, other access points can be opened.
So what we feel, I think that the same feeling that most of the people here that work every day feel. Injustice, frustration. This is not fair. This is not a fair response that the Israeli government should have been taken. I think that the answer should be another one. It's the respect for international humanitarian law, the respect for the lives of thousands of children, kids, women and men that are suffering the consequences of this cycle of violence. So I do believe that we need to call upon Israel. Democracies must be must fulfill our obligations with international humanitarian law, and this is something that must be fulfilled by Israel. So my feeling today when I see all these trucks and the suffering of the people in Gaza is frustration, is also injustice, and they need to do, the correct thing to do, which is to provide all this humanitarian aid. Of course, from our side, from the Spanish side, we also announced 4 tons of humanitarian aid, in this case to the Egyptian government to complement all the needs that the Egyptian government needs for to provide health assistance to the refugees and the people coming out from Gaza.
Las Vegas, Spanish First Agency called PISA. First, if you allow me, Prime Minister in Spanish, Presidente Sánchez. Queríamos preguntar, el presidente Al-Sisi ha trasladado hoy su hartazgo con la promesa de la solución de dos estados a la que la comunidad internacional lleva formándose más de 30 años sin que nada haya cambiado. Usted ha prometido impulsar en la Unión Europea el reconocimiento del Estado palestino. Queríamos preguntarle si está dispuesto a que España haga ese reconocimiento de manera unilateral. Y Prime Minister De Croo, the same question for you, please. Do you contemplate a unilateral recognition of the state of Palestine?
I think that the momentum has come for the international community, especially for the European Union and member states, to recognize the state of Palestine. And I think it would be important if many member states of the European Union we do it all together. But if this is not the case, of course, Spain will take their own decisions.
First things first, let's stop the violence, let's liberate the hostages, let's get the aid inside, let's open more access points. These are the most important elements now, and this is what concretely is helping a population in Gaza that is suffering. So the first priority is help people who are suffering, and that means getting everything that is ready here inside. That's the first priority, and then indeed, as my colleague Pedro Sanchez indicated, then people need to sit around the table, and then things need to be discussed. But let's do first things first, and that's helping people who are in need.
It's about humanitarian aid to Gaza Strip. A lot of people say that it's not effective without permanent ceasefire, as so many UN organizations cannot operate inside without permanent ceasefire. What are you doing regarding effective humanitarian aid and permanent ceasefire?
So since the beginning of this conflict, we've been very vocal in asking the Israeli authorities to stop and to implement the permanent ceasefire. And this is something that we've been also demanding before the multilateral institutions and before the rest of our allies and friends, different countries. So from our side, we have a very clear position on this, which is to stop the violence, to implement a permanent ceasefire, and to allow the humanitarian aid to enter into Gaza.
As I just said, today we have a temporary ceasefire. The temporary ceasefire becomes a permanent one day after day. And so if every day we liberate more hostages, if every day more help is coming in, this is the first step. And then a permanent one, this is something that needs to be built together. And it can only be built together if both parties understand that the solution to this conflict is never going to be violence. The solution to this conflict is that people sit around the table. I think everyone on both sides has a huge responsibility for that. And political leaders need to step beyond their own shadow and take decisions which are not easy but necessary decisions to go into peace talks.
From the Belgian television RTL, I have a question maybe a bit more personal. You have spent 2 days in the region. What would you keep in mind, and I would say in your heart, as you are going back to Europe?
I think first of all a lot of hope. If I see so many people here, hundreds of people here who are volunteers and who want to help people who are in need, we can only be extremely hopeful. But being hopeful is not enough. Now a ceasefire, it's up to us to make it work, and that's the message that we bring here. Last message is there has been too much human suffering. And stopping human suffering should be our number one priority. Stop the fighting, release the hostages, and get the help in. That's the first step, and that's the message that we bring here. And I hope that somewhere in the next hours we can bring it in practice.
To me, I would say two images. The first one is a young boy of 18, 19 years old that we met in the kibbutz that we visited yesterday in Israel, which suffered, of course, these terrorist attacks from Hamas, and he was willing to. He came back and he was telling us that he was ready to rebuild his home and to live where he belongs. And the second one is perhaps all these images of a long file of trucks waiting to open these gates and to allow the humanitarian aid to enter into Gaza. At the end of the day, as Prime Minister De Croo said, hope. And this is what we will work, I'm sure, with our friend, for that hope for the region, the people in Palestine and the people in Israel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Đây là chiếc xe chở con tin đó, đang chở đến cho địa điểm trao đổi á, cái chiếc xe van đó, một chiếc xe đó. Rồi sau đó sẽ mở cái cửa, cái biên giới của Ai Cập với lại cái miền nam của Gaza để chở đồ tiếp tế nhân đạo đến giải Gaza.
جماعة بلاش تقول على المكان. يا جماعة احنا طالعين لايف يا حاج.
Đây là phía bên biên giới của Ai Cập á, những cái đoàn xe vận tải đồ tiếp tế nhân đạo đến giải Gaza đang chờ để trao đổi con tin đó, thì sẽ mở cổng cho những cái chiếc xe vận tải này chở qua bên giải Gaza để viện trợ nhân đạo.
زلزال زلزال
Thì hiện nay với miền Nam của giải Gaza có khoảng 2 triệu dân. Tổng số 2.300.000 dân á, thì 2 triệu nó nằm dưới miền Nam à. Còn là vài trăm ngàn ở trên miền Bắc. Thì ở trên miền Bắc giải Gaza bây giờ nó điêu tàn hết rồi.
مستمرة ربما تلقت فيها القاهرة العدد الأكبر من الاتصالات من كافة دول العالم، ربما مؤيدة للجهد المصري داعمة له بشكل أو بآخر.
Đây là những chiếc xe để chở con tin đó.
بالتنسيق مع الجانب القطري بشكل كبير والذي تم بلقاء
Đó là những chiếc xe bus để nó chở những con tin trao trả đó.
في القاهرة قبل بضعة أيام. ربما كانت هناك زيارات لعدد من المسؤولين الأمنيين الإسرائيليين إلى القاهرة والدوحة لتنسيق هذا المشهد الذي نراه اليوم. هو مشهد ربما يكون شاملا أيضا بإدخال أكبر كمية من المساعدات.
إذا مشاهدينا الكرام تابعنا هذه الصورة
تقدر الأعداد حسب الفصائل الفلسطينية، تقدر أعداد من احتجازاتهم لديها منذ يوم 7 أكتوبر الماضي بحوالي 240 محتجزا. هذه الأرقام تقول الفصائل الفلسطينية إنها تزيد عن ذلك بكثير عن التقديرات الإسرائيلية بوجود 240. تقول الفصائل إنهم أكثر بكثير، فبالتالي هناك ربما سعة في التفاوض الآن على إخراج مزيد من هؤلاء المحتجزين في مقابل تمديد للهدنة الإنسانية وإيصال مساعدات أكثر لداخل قطاع غزة. ربما غاز الطهي كان مطلوبا بشكل كبير إلى داخل القطاع، وصل اليوم وربما لأول مرة منذ 7 أكتوبر. ربما ذلك يخفف كثيرا من الضغط الإنساني الذي هو حادث بالفعل مع نقص كبير في الدواء ومياه الشرب والاحتياجات الإنسانية الكبيرة، حتى وصلت في بعض المناطق إلى حد المجاعة وتقنين استهلاك الطعام في بعض الأماكن. ربما مناطق شمال قطاع غزة تحتاج بكثير جدا إلى كل هذه المساعدات والكميات بشكل أكبر، وربما تقنين وصول هذه المساعدات إلى مناطق أوسع داخل قطاع غزة مع هذه التهدئة الواسعة والمستمرة لمدة 4 أيام. تقول إنه من الممكن أن تصل المساعدات إلى أماكن أبعد داخل قطاع غزة. ربما سيتوقف تحليق الطيران الحربي الإسرائيلي في مناطق وسط وجنوب قطاع غزة لمدة 4 أيام، لن يستمر، ربما لن يتوقف إلا لمدة 6 ساعات فقط في مناطق شمال قطاع غزة، وهذا حسب الطلب الإسرائيلي. لكن على أي حال هذه بداية. ربما الجهود الدبلوماسية الكثيرة التي تمارس الآن عربيا ودوليا بمساندة كثيرة، بدعم كثير، بموقف ثابت كثير من الدول العربية الفاعلة في هذه الأزمة كمصر، يقول إنه من الممكن بالفعل الوصول إلى حلول أكثر استدامة لهذه.
Bắt đầu á, thấy cái những con chim tình nó rút xuống á, cái gì thấy cái đó trao trả đó, đàn bà với lại phụ nữ.
ربما وصول أعداد من المحتجزين الإسرائيليين لدى الفصائل الفلسطينية هنا في معبر رفح تمهيدا لنقلهم بعد قليل إلى أماكن توجههم حيث يريدون. ربما الموقف الإسرائيلي يعني تلقى ضغوطا كثيرة بسبب أو للوصول إلى هذه الهدنة الإنسانية. ربما كان اليمين الإسرائيلي وما يزال على موقفه الرافض من الوصول إلى هدنة إنسانية أو لوقف لإطلاق النار، لكنه بالفعل أثني عن موقفه وتليل هذه المشاهد التي رأيناها اليوم. هذا اليوم كنا يجب أن نرى مشاهده في الأمس مثلا، لكن ربما مع المماطلات الإسرائيلية تأخر تسليم المحتجزين والرهائن الفلسطينيين بالتالي إلى أماكنهم، فتأخر مشهد اليوم منذ الأمس إلى اليوم، لكنه جاء في النهاية، جاء ربما بضغوط من أهالي المحتجزين الإسرائيليين لدى الفصائل الفلسطينية والذين يمارسون ضغوطا كثيرة على حكومة نتنياهو، سواء الحكومة المصغرة أو الكابينت الإسرائيلي. ربما هذه الضغوط ما أدى إلى هذا المشهد الذي نراه اليوم. وسائل الإسعاف ربما تقدم بعض العون الصحي لمن يحتاجه من المحتجزين الإسرائيليين المفرج عنهم في هذه الأثناء. ما زالت إذا الجهود الدبلوماسية مستمرة لإثارة أمد هذه الهدنة الإنسانية ل4 أيام. ربما هذا ما يمكن الوصول إليه بالفعل بعد أن شهدنا كثيرا إمكانية الوصول إلى حلول. هذا المشهد يقول أن الوصول إلى حلول ممكن بالفعل مع بعض ربما اللين في المواقف من الجانب الإسرائيلي. ربما هذا المشهد يكون أكثر تأثيرا على الحكومة الإسرائيلية في الوصول إلى هدنة أطول. وإذا ما زلنا مشاهدينا الكرام نتابع هذه المشاهد التي تأتينا في داخل معبر رفح البري للمحتجزين الإسرائيليين المفرج عنهم من الفصائل الفلسطينية بعد اتفاق لوقف إطلاق النار يقضي بإطلاق 50 محتجزا إسرائيليا من لدى الفصائل الفلسطينية مقابل 150 أسيرا فلسطينيا لدى السجون الإسرائيلية في هذه الأثناء. ربما الكلام عن استمرار وصول المساعدات الإنسانية إلى قطاع غزة
يعني يحظى بكثير من التفاؤل لاستمراره بشكل أوسع. وربما أيضا هذه الكميات الكبيرة التي تقول أيام الهدنة الأربعة المقبلة أنه سيتم إدخال كميات أكبر مما تم إدخاله يوميا في أيام الأزمة. إذا كنا نتحدث عن دخول نحو 230 شاحنة في اليوم الأول من هذه الهدنة، فالمرجو أن تزداد هذه الأرقام والكميات والأنواع أيضا في الأيام المقبلة، وهذا حسب اتفاق جرى ويجري في الوصول في النهاية إلى هذا الاتفاق الذي تم تنفيذه اليوم. ربما لاحظ هنا من يقف في معبر رفح البري أن أصوات الانفجارات الإسرائيلية توقفت منذ الساعة 7 صباحا تنفيذا للهدنة الإنسانية من الجانب الإسرائيلي، وهذا التزام إسرائيلي بالتالي في اليوم الأول لهذه الهدنة استمرارا ربما أو تمنيا لأن يستمر ذلك في الأيام الأربعة المقبلة. إذا على مدى الأيام الأربعة المقبلة سيتم بالتدريج الإفراج عن 50 محتجزا لدى الفصائل الفلسطينية مقابل 150 من الأسرى الفلسطينيين بنسبة 1:3. إذا خلال الأيام الأربعة المقبلة ربما تمهيدا وأملا في الإفراج عن مزيد منهم في الأيام المقبلة مقابل تمديد أكثر لأيام الهدنة الإنسانية. يعني كما أكدت أيضا عودة العالقين، وهذه كانت أزمة إنسانية كبيرة، ربما عودة العالقين الفلسطينيين إلى قطاع غزة بعد 49 يوما كان أمرا لافتا أن يعودوا بأطفالهم مرة أخرى إلى داخل غزة رغم كل المشاكل الموجود فيها القطاع من نقص كبير في مواد الإعاشة والمواد الطبية، لكنهم آثروا العودة بعد أن علقوا في الجانب المصري بسبب عدم إمكانية دخولهم إلى قطاع غزة مع استمرار القصف الإسرائيلي على مناطق مختلفة لم تكن عملية دخولهم إلى غزة ربما آمنة بالشكل الكامل. لكن ما حدث اليوم في الوصول إلى هذه الهدنة يقول إن ذلك صار ممكنا، وصارت الأمنيات أكثر أن تستمر هذه الهدنة لكي يخرج أعداد أو تخرج أعداد كبيرة منهم أو تعود أعداد كبيرة منهم إلى قطاع غزة مرة أخرى. ربما المثير في هذا الأمر مع استمرار أيام هذه الأزمة هو المواقف العربية الثابتة مما يحدث داخل قطاع غزة، خاصة الموقف المصري الذي أكد أنه لا حل للأزمة على حساب تهجير الفلسطينيين، على حساب خروجهم من أراضيهم، على حساب احتلال إسرائيل لمزيد من الأراضي الفلسطينية. هذا موقف ربما داعم كثيرا أو لقي دعما كثيرا من سواء من الجانب الداخلي الفلسطيني أو من المجتمع الدولي الذي رأى بعينه سقوط الآلاف من الضحايا تحت ركام البيوت ومع القصف الإسرائيلي الشديد والعنيف جدا لكثير من المناطق السكنية والمنشآت الطبية في قطاع غزة. إذا نشاهد ما زلنا هذه المشاهد التي نراها في داخل معبر رفح البري لوصول عدد من المحتجزين الإسرائيليين إلى داخل معبر رفح تمهيدا إلى خروجهم مرة أخرى في أماكن وصولهم التي يريدونها في النهاية. وهذا المشهد بالفعل هو مشهد ربما ينتظره العالم أو انتظره العالم منذ 7 أكتوبر الماضي مع استمرار الجهود الدبلوماسية. إذا وصلنا لهذا المشهد الذي نراه الآن. هذه سيارات الإسعاف المصطفى بشكل كبير داخل معبر رفح تقول إن هناك استعدادات كثيرة أجريت داخل قطاع غزة لاستكمال هذه الصورة أو لأن تخرج هذه الصورة على الوجه الأكمل. ربما هذا المنفذ الذي رفع درجة استعداداته إلى الدرجات القصوى منذ أيام ومنذ بواكير الأزمة في 7 أكتوبر لإدخال أكبر عدد ممكن من المساعدات إلى قطاع غزة، وهو الآن يعني يشهد مشهدا دوليا بالفعل بخروج محتجزين من لدى
Nó có mấy người đó, đàn bà già đi đó.
عودتهم مرة أخرى إلى
Thả ra.
وطنهم التي يريدون. نتابع إذن هذه المشاهد الإنسانية الكبيرة التي ربما انتظرها العالم كثيرا كي تتوقف الحرب والضربات في قطاع غزة وكي يخرج المحتجزون بالتالي إلى ديارهم. وهذا هو الأمن والسلام الذي تتمناه كثير من الدول العربية الذي سعت مصر إلى أن يتحقق بشكل أوسع أيضا.
إذا شكرا لزميلنا أحمد بشتو، كان معنا مباشرة من أمام معبر رفح، وما زال معنا الزميل أحمد بشتو يوفينا بصورة تفصيلية من داخل معبر رفح للصورة الآن، وهو المعبر الذي يشهد عملية تسلم الجانب المصري عبر الصليب الأحمر والتي تمت بالفعل للمحتجزين الذين أفرجت عنهم حركة حماس بموجب الاتفاق الذي تم التوصل إليه ودخل حيز التنفيذ اليوم في 7 صباحا. وتدقيقا لمعلوماتنا التي نوافيكم بها أولا بأول، تم الإفراج عن 13 إسرائيليا و10 تايلانديين وواحد يحمل الجنسية الفلبينية. إذا مجمل الذين أفرج عنهم 24 شخصا من المحتجزين لدى حركة حماس في دفعة الأولى للإفراج عن بقية المحتجزين لدى الحركة الذين يزيد عددهم على 240 محتجزا في عملية طوفان الأقصى التي اندلعت في 7 أكتوبر الماضي. ونحن قد وصلنا إلى الفصل الأهم ربما في هذه الحرب على قطاع غزة والتي بدأت بعد عملية طوفان الأقصى. نقصد به فصل التقاط الأنفاس، فصل هدنة ال4 أيام أو هدنة الأيام ال4 التي دخلت حيز التنفيذ صباح اليوم، والتي يتم بمقتضاها الآن ما نشاهده على الشاشة من تبادل للأسرى في الجانب الفلسطيني، تبادل الأسرى الإسرائيليين أو تبادل المحتجزين الإسرائيليين لدى حركة حماس. في الجانب الآخر وهناك في الضفة الغربية وفي بلدة بيتونيا حيث يقبع سجن عوفر الإسرائيلي الشهير يتم الإفراج أيضا ربما في هذه اللحظة بالتزامن مع المعتقلات الفلسطينيات والقصر من الشباب الفلسطيني الذين سيتم والدفعة الأولى منهم والذين سيتم الإفراج عنهم بالتزامن طبقا لما نص عليه هذا الاتفاق. 50 محتجزا لدى حماس في مقابل 150 من المعتقلات والقصر من شباب الفلسطينيين في السجون الإسرائيلية، أحدها هو سجن غنطر.
نعم يا خالد، ننوه فقط بهذه اللقطات الحية والحصرية لشاشة القاهرة الإخبارية والتي فيها تصطف عربات الإسعاف وبداخلها المحتجزين الإسرائيليين وبدء إجراءات الفحص الطبي لهم، حيث تقوم الأطقم الطبية المصرية بتقديم الرعاية الصحية لعدد من المحتجزين الذين وصلوا إلى معبر رفح. وكما أشرت عددهم أو من بدأ الفحص الطبي لهم حوالي 13 إسرائيليين و10 تايلانديين وفلبينيون واحد استلمتهم مصر ضمن هذه الدفعة الأولى من هذا الاتفاق وهذه الهدنة، هدنة ال4 أيام، وهم الآن بحوزة الطرف المصري تمهيدا لنقلهم للطرف الإسرائيلي. وكما نرى الآن أمامنا على الشاشة هذه
cho thêm nè đó, mấy người con tin đó, mấy người đàn bà phụ nữ không ạ?
المصرية بمساعدتها سيبقون هنا في هذا المعبر لبعض الوقت وبعدها سيتم
thả ra thế nó ốm, nó yếu người quá vậy.
وهذه الخطوة تأتي ربما
Nó nhốt mà chắc nó nhốt làm sao mà thả ra không được khỏe mạnh vậy? Một người đi mà mấy người dìu luôn.
قبل نقلهم. هذا المشهد ربما يأتي بعد 49 يوما وتتويجا لنجاح الدبلوماسية المصرية بالتعاون بالطبع مع الوسيط القطري وبرعاية أمريكية الوسيط المصري. وكما نتابع هو الوسيط الأكثر موثوقية من قبل كل الأطراف، والذي استطاع بعد جهود الشاقة التوصل لهذا الاتفاق، والذي يأتي هذا المشهد تتويجا له. وهذه اللقطات الحية والحصرية لشاشة القاهرة الإخبارية من داخل معبر رفح. وكما ذكرت خالد، هناك مشهد آخر يأتي بالتوازي مع هذه المشاهد من سجن عوفر، حيث يتم ربما حصر أسرى المتواجدين داخل السجون الإسرائيلية من الفلسطينيين، أيضا تمهيدا لاستلامهم من قبل الصليب الأحمر. وبعد ذلك أيضا تتم العملية بالتوازي بعد وصول هؤلاء ربما للجانب الإسرائيلي بموجب هذا الاتفاق وهذه الهدنة التي يتم أيضا بموجبها دخول المساعدات الإنسانية بوتيرة سريعة. هذه المساعدات التي تحوي الوقود، المواد الغذائية والكثير من الأدوية والمساعدات الطبية بعد هذا القصف الذي احتمله الفلسطينيين في قطاع غزة.
إذا الأطقم الطبية المصرية كنا نتابع عبر شاشة القاهرة الإخبارية حصرا هذه الصور مباشرة من معبر رفح، حيث تقدم الأطقم الطبية المصرية الكشف الطبي أو الرعاية الطبية والكشف الطبي للمحتجزين الذين أفرج عنهم عددهم 13 إسرائيليا و10 تايلانديين وفلبيني واحد. تسلمتهم مصر بالفعل ضمن اتفاق الهدنة عبر الصليب الأحمر من الجانب الفلسطيني، الفصائل الفلسطينية، تمهيدا لتسليمهم الى الجانب الاسرائيلي او الى جهاز الامن الداخلي الاسرائيلي المعروف باسم الشباب، وهو الجهه المنوط بها تسلم المحتجزين.
في شمال وجنوب ووسط قطاع غزة من آلة تدمير واسعة، وربما أيضا يشهد الآن خروج عدد من محتجزين لدى الفصائل الفلسطينية. فهذه المشاهد إذا بتجميعها قد تؤكد أن الوصول إلى حلول سلمية هو الأقرب إلى الواقع وإلى التطبيق. إذا فكرة عدم السماح بالتهجير القسري للفلسطينيين هذا أمر أشادت به عدة دول أوروبية وعربية، ربما هو سقوط عدد كبير من الضحايا، 70% منهم من النساء والأطفال، وهذه المشاهد الإنسانية المروعة التي رأيناها صباح مساء طوال 9 وقت والمرجعيات والقرارات.
They were released as well. Pause to continue for more than 50 hostages to be released. That's our goal. This morning, I've been engaged with my team as we began the first difficult days of implementing this deal. It's only a start. So far, it's gone well. Earlier this morning, 13 Israeli hostages were released, including an elderly woman, a grandmother, and mothers with their young children, some under the age of 6 years old. Separately, several Thai nationals and Filipino nationals were also kidnapped by Hamas on the 7th. They were released as well. All of these hostages have been through a terrible ordeal. And this is the beginning of a long journey of healing for them. The teddy bears waiting to greet those children at the hospital are a stark reminder of the trauma these children have been through. And it's at such a very young age. Jill and I, Jill's with me here, keeping them all in our prayers today. Today has been a product of a lot of hard work and weeks of personal engagement. From the moment Hamas kidnapped these people, I, along with my team, worked around the clock to their release. We saw the first results of this effort with the release of 2 American hostages in late October, followed by the release of 2 Israeli hostages. I've consistently pressed for a pause in the fighting for 2 reasons: to accelerate and expand humanitarian assistance going into Gaza, and 2, to facilitate the release of hostages. And over the past several weeks, I've spoken repeatedly with the Emir of Qatar, the President Sisi of Egypt, and Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel, to help secure this deal, to nail it down. And I want to thank all 3 leaders for their personal partnership to get this done. I spoke with the Emir and President Sisi and the Prime Minister Netanyahu again on Wednesday to confirm the elements of the engagement. As I said, today's release are the start of a process. We expect more hostages to be released tomorrow, more the day after, more the day after that. Over the next few days, we expect that dozens of hostages will be returned to their families. We also remember all those who are still being held and renew our commitment to work for their release as well. 2 American women and 1 4-year-old child, Abigail, who remains among those missing. We also will not stop until we get these hostages brought home with an answer to their whereabouts. I remain in personal contact with the leaders of Qatar, Egypt, and Israel to make sure this stays on track and every aspect of the deal is implemented. You know, this extended pause in the fighting brings a critical opportunity to deliver much needed food, medicine, water, and fuel to the civilians in Gaza, and we are not wasting 1 single minute. Since my trip to Israel last month, I've been focused on accelerating the delivery of humanitarian assistance to Gaza in coordination with the United Nations and the Red Cross. I just spoke with my special envoy for the Middle East humanitarian issues, David Satterfield, for an update. And I've asked him to monitor our progress hour by hour and keep me personally informed. From the beginning, we put in place mechanisms to prevent Hamas from diverting these supplies. And we're continuing that effort to make sure aid gets to the people who need it. More than 200 trucks arrived at the crossing point in Egypt and Gaza today. These trucks carry food and medicine, as well as fuel and cooking gas. The fuel will be used not only to power the trucks delivering these life-saving supplies, but for desalination, for water wells, for hospitals, and for bakeries. And hundreds more trucks are getting in position as well, ready to enter Gaza over the coming days to support the innocent Palestinians who are suffering greatly because of this war that Hamas has unleashed. Hamas doesn't give a damn about that. We also look to the future. As we look to the future, we have to end this cycle of violence in the Middle East. We need to renew our resolve to pursue this 2-state solution, where Israelis and Palestinians can one day live side by side in a 2-state solution, with equal measure of freedom and dignity. 2 states for 2 peoples. And it's more important now than ever. Hamas unleashed this terrorist. I'm hearing a lot, but I'm not going to speak to it right now. There's an overwhelming desire on the part of the region to, let me back up. I cannot prove what I'm about to say. But I believe one of the reasons why Hamas struck when they did was they knew that I was working very closely with the Saudis and others in the region to bring peace to the region by having recognition of Israel and Israel's right to exist. You may recall when we did the G20 a little while ago, I was able to get a resolution, a statement passed through there saying we're gonna build a railroad from Riyadh all the way through the Middle East into Saudi Arabia, Israel, et cetera, and all the way up to Europe. Not the railroad, it would be an underground pipeline and then railroad. The whole idea is there's overwhelming interest, and I think most Arab nations know it, in coordinating with one another to change the dynamic in the region for longer term peace. And that is what I'm going to continue to work on. Thank you all very, very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to you all. I hope you enjoy it.
Rồi sau khi trả tù Minh thì ông Joe Biden ông lên ông đọc cái bài đó, rồi chỉ trả một hai câu hỏi rồi ông sẽ bỏ ông đi. Cảm ơn tất cả quý anh chị em đã vào diễn đàn hôm nay để theo dõi cái video này. Nó